Good evening. This is the Angry Capitalist, and tonight I'm going to be doing a episode on the ENTJ series. This one will be covering ENTJ Memory. It's commonly been something that I've observed when people talk about ENTJ's memory that our long-term memory is not exactly the best. Or I should put a caveat on it that our long-term memory is not the best until we've been deep diving into a topic for a while already, or if the memory is related to a painful event. To give those a bit more context, I'm going to go over how I've noticed my memory works to see if this flushes this concept out for a few people. Please keep in mind that what I'm describing applies to myself. If this is similar or the same for you, or perhaps a bit different, please go ahead and drop it down in the comments below. To describe the function of my memory, I would like to use the analogy of a warehouse or a large library. What I mean by that is that it's almost like the memories and the information that I have retained in my memory is in fact separated by distance a bit. And in order to retrieve information on different topics, it's not as though I can just recall a specific piece of information immediately off the top of my head. Rather, I have to navigate through that library or warehouse to get into the section of my memory where information on that topic is first contained. A brief note on that, however, because my memory seems to work by association, it's fairly easy to jump between topics if there is a tangible thread that I can go from one to the other. What I mean by that is that if we think about the real world and all the different disciplines within it, none of these are truly completely 100% separated. They all have some connection or association. History and chemistry are intertwined. From the history of the Roman Empire and the mechanisms of Roman concrete to the rise of the Prussian, later German states in World War I, brought on by the Haber-Bosch process. Later, those same chemists giving rise to mustard gas in World War I, as well as the ability to produce ammonium and ammonium nitrate in mass for munitions from the same process that gave those states the ability to produce fertilizer in mass. Now, where this can frustrate some people is that, once again, if especially, perhaps many people, many different types, but especially for an ENTJ, you can ask them a question out of the blue about a topic that they may know a lot about. But because this question is coming from out of the blue, and their focus of memory is not on that topic right away, there's a bit of a lag effect there. They've got to get into that zone to retrieve that information. Additionally, this goes into how people think. The way that people think is often broken down to words or images. Case in point, I actually just had to pause the recording to do a quick search to make sure that I would not screw up the names on this concept that I'm going to share. So for many individuals, they tend to break how they think down into images or words. Now, the Greek philosopher Plato had came up with this idea that there was this essence to all things, including, for example, a cup. That within every cup there was the perfect cup. Now, to give some context to that story, the other philosopher, Diogenes, he had criticized Plato and called it stupid. But I think what Plato may have been getting at is the idea of thinking in concepts as opposed to just words as a standalone word, the standalone word of a cup, or the standalone image of a cup. It's the idea of thinking of, if you reference the concept of a cup to an individual, that individual is going to think about everything that a cup means to them. Why the hell am I bringing this up? This is a way that I often experience my own thoughts, and that I will be thinking, especially if I'm thinking quite intensely on a topic, or even if I'm just daydreaming, I'll think in overall concepts as opposed to just standalone words or a particular singular image. This can be extremely overwhelming. And for myself, this can take up quite a bit of bandwidth. If this way of thinking also applies to other ENTJs, speaking of which, once again, if you're an ENTJ or another type, if you notice yourself thinking in that kind of a pattern, please describe it down in the comments below. Where I'm going with this is that additionally, for the difficulties that ENTJs can have with memory, if they're thinking in concepts, that can take up a lot of the bandwidth. Additionally, between thinking of things in its overall concept rather than the singular, thing in the context that is currently present, combined with having to go into the topic space to retrieve information about the thing within its current context. It's not that ENTJs don't have stuff in their memory. It's that the process of, one, retrieving it is quite difficult, and then two, being able to filter down to that particular thing can be quite taxing. Now, of course, what can we do with this? First off, if we know that our memory tends to work by topic association, I believe that once you're aware of that, it makes it more easy, or it makes it easier to memorize stuff by cataloging it. So, as an example, the majority of the history that I can remember and retain and recall, as well as most of the information I've learned about any topic, I learned about in one sitting via a documentary, a long form podcast, books, audiobooks. This can create a good deal of conflict with the school system, whereby you go into a topic for an hour. For myself, I take about a half hour to really dive into a topic and to be able to recall the information that I've previously learned on it. So if you go into a classroom and you're sitting there for an hour and then you get halfway through and you're finally grasping it, you've only got about a half hour left in that class to work on it and to learn more and to retain more of that information. So if there's stuff that you want to learn, I strongly recommend giving yourself a little bit of time to warm up on the previous information and then to sit down for maybe 2, 3, 4 hours, maybe even days or weeks to do a deep dive on that subject matter and to take the time to go ahead and catalog all of that information. Second, if you know that you're going to need to access information on a particular topic in advance, give yourself the time to warm up your memory to that topic. This could range from anything to reviewing notes in advance, flashcards. My personal favorite, because my memory seems to warm up the best and the quickest via interaction and discussion. If you can, go ahead and have a few people that you can quiz yourself and each other on the information that you're about to have to use. Additionally, especially if you're going into the working environment, I strongly recommend having rituals in your day-to-day life that allow you to connect with the particular topics and associated topics that you'll have to use during the day. As an example, what one may do is before getting ready for work or before the morning commute, I strongly recommend having a curated news feed, perhaps audio, that associates to your work that you're going to do. As an example, if you're working from home, when you get up in the morning, perhaps after in my case, after I finish my morning exercise, I will often have a few YouTube channels that cover different topics, including topics related to my work. I'll listen to those for about a half hour to 45 minutes before I even really get started with my work for that day. This could potentially also help you with remembering information about the people in your personal life, whether it be your kids, spouse, friends, etc. If you're able to incorporate bits and pieces of them before you go to interact with them, that can make recalling the information that's relevant to them a little bit easier. Personally, I struggle with birthdays, anniversaries, etc., as well as just remembering some of the stuff that's going on in those people's lives, partially just because I'm pretty involved with my own thing, and that's where I have to put 95% of my mental activity is toward my own business. But I still want to make sure that they're taken care of and being looked after. So before you go to interact with a person, hang out with them, if you text them back and forth, take 5 minutes, review the previous text. Pictures, if you have Google Photos and memories and stuff, go ahead and look back through pictures that you may have taken with them last or taken of them last. Any little thing like that that you can think of to help jog your memory about this person, the better. On the same topic of rituals, sensory recall is extremely, extremely invaluable when it comes to this. The idea of sensory recall can apply to just about anyone, but I think it's particularly helpful for ENTJs and maybe a few other personality types. If you're a non-ENTJ, and if you know what I'm talking about with sensory recall and if you use it, go ahead and drop it down in the comments below. Or if you're an ENTJ and you already use sensory recall, if you have any tips or recommendations to build on what I'm going to talk about here, once again, drop it down below. I may even steal a few of your ideas for myself. So, sensory recall is the idea that particular stimuli can make it easier to recall memories and emotions, even older memories and emotions that we may have left buried for quite a while. These can include things particularly such as smell, touch, or sound. Going back to the idea of studying, one thing that I used in my later years in high school was if I was going to study on a topic, if it was something where I was reading, I would put on a specific genre of music while reading about that topic. This way, I could listen to that same genre of music again in the future, and it would help me to recall that topic just by the sensory recall. Touch. I'm going to refer to this as tactile memory. Specific textures and objects can be good tools to recall memories. ENTJs are probably not one of the most sentimental types out there. So this is something that I think may especially help with interpersonal relationships. As an example, two points here, smell and touch. After losing my grandfather, it came to my attention that I should get one of the coffee cups from his house because his coffee cups that he used were glass and they had like they were textured with like ducks and geese and flowers on them. They weren't like painted or anything. This is just the texture of the cup. So for myself, so that I would be able to revisit the memories of my grandfather, I could have one of his coffee cups with this very particular texture, have coffee in it, and the dual sensory experience of the smell of coffee and the feel of the cup in my hand could assist me in revisiting some of those memories into the future. Likewise, this can also apply to objects that it may be a good idea to have within your workspace. I currently have several pens, and these pens are from a previous workplace of mine when I worked in banking. And occasionally if I really want to get into the finance part of my memory and thought processes, I'll often grab one of these pens if I'm jotting down notes or ideas about that topic, or I'll just fiddle with it for a few minutes to assist myself in the recall process. Little things like that you can incorporate can be a tremendous tool. To wrap up the video, I'll go ahead and do a brief overview of this again. So, 1, ENTJ Memory works like a warehouse with physical space between topics. 2, concept thinking can, although it's a very strong way of thinking and can be extremely useful, it can produce info overload and can take up a good amount of bandwidth for thoughts and memories. Cataloging. Use different tools and studying methods to catalog your memory accordingly. Integrate rituals as well as sensory recall into your learning process and into your daily life to assist you in remembering things. Or rather, I should say, to assist you in getting to the memory. You have that stuff memorized. It's just a matter of getting into that headspace. And when in doubt, take some time to warm up your memory on a topic before you have to engage with it. Especially that last point right there, I think is the most valuable thing that I can communicate based on what I've been learning about my memory and how it works for quite a while now. If you enjoyed this video, or if you have any questions, comments, etc., go ahead and drop those down below. If you enjoy this content and would like to see more of it, please also like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications on future uploads. Thank you for listening, and have a good evening.